What up, y'all? It's your girl Shelby Lov, back at it again, waiting for my ride to this movie set. But in the meantime, I had some things on my head and on my heart that I want to talk about. So, you know what I think is just interesting and ironic and funny is how hypocritical we can be in the church. Now, you probably have heard sermons that I reposted from my pastors about this, and it's just so interesting how the enemy can trick you into really believing that it makes sense. Like, for a long time, I used to think that having faith was just really having blind optimism in a situation and expecting God to drop down out of nowhere and fix it all for me without any work, without any discipline, sometimes without even any real change or conviction. And when those things wouldn't happen, I would think, dang, God doesn't love me. Dang, I'm not God's favorite. Dang, God doesn't see me. And then I would start to doubt God himself. Now, that's not God's fault. This is the fault of, well, it's really the enemy's fault, of course, but it is a trap that has been set up by the church and repeated and taught to every generation afterwards over and over and over again, which is why a lot of people, I believe, in my generation were leaving the church, because there was all this false optimism with no real change or conviction, and then people were still going through the runaround and going through the generational curses wondering where God was at. And I felt that way, and I literally just broke through that, and I'm still working on staying consistent in that, because I was in a situation where literally God was giving me signs, and even I had really awesome, godly people in my life who could help me. But the curse of really truly believing that this was what faith looked like, because it's how my parents operated, and even how some people around them operated in the generations before them, and then wondering where God was at when God was right there trying to tell me, this is not going to work. You've been trying this and you've been doing this for years, and your parents have also been doing this for years, and things have not been manifesting. Yes, I've given you these gifts. Yes, I've given you these thoughts, ideas, and suggestions on how to make these big dreams or accomplishments or even assignments that were going to get people saved for me happen, but you have not been walking in my order to make them happen, and you have not been walking in faith. So it hasn't been working. Like, it's not that, it's just hard. We make it harder than it is. I think we make it harder than it is. And I know for me, overthinking has also been a curse that I've been dealing with in my family as well. Like, the enemy really, the mind is the enemy's playground. If he can get you to think and be convinced to think that what God is telling you isn't God and what he's telling you is God, then that's already enough to get you set up in a cycle to run around like this. Now, what does this have to do with hypocrisy? Well, the ironic part about this is, and I dealt with this in my walk, especially currently, is as soon as you understand that the enemy is the enemy and that God is God, and then you start moving in it, everybody and their mama want to act like no longer operating out of the generational curse is like ridiculous, is blasphemous, is dumbfounding. And when I say that, I mean you starting to move in ways that nobody else has moved in, even if it's getting you the results. People will be sitting there mad and irritated and trying to call it out and trying to rebuke it with a religious spirit, saying that it's not God. And the irony of it is, if it's not God, then it's not going to get God's results. So when it gets God's results, that should be enough right there for you to stop and say, maybe this is God, and maybe this is how God wanted this person to do it. And maybe this is not how God's going to work for me to do it, because I'm a different person with a different calling, with a different assignment.